Thank you very much for joining us, and we will officially start our webinar in around 5 minutes. And as we wait, the team will play the video to introduce the Urban Act project. Thank you very much.
Gazing upon our world from a distance, it appears peaceful and calm. But the reality is far different. The repercussions of climate change are approaching us all, and we all contribute to this impact. By 2050, projections indicate that over 3 billion people will reside in various urban centers in the Asia-Pacific region alone. Urban activities are a key contributor to climate change. Cities are responsible for 75% of global CO2 emissions, with transport and buildings among the most significant contributors. And since 2012, the Asia-Pacific region has collectively been responsible for more than half of global greenhouse gas emissions yearly. The repercussions of climate change are imminent and befalling us all. Several Asian countries are among the top 10 countries most affected by climate change, with the Philippines ranked the 4th, India ranked the 7th, and Thailand ranked the 9th. It's time to act, and we have a joint responsibility to address climate change through urban development planning and design guided by climate data. That's where Urban Act comes in. Urban Act, or the Integrated Urban Climate Action for Low Carbon and Resilient Cities project, is a regional project that aims to support the transformation towards low carbon and resilient urban development and contribute to implementing each partner country's nationally determined contributions and the Sustainable Development Goals. Funded by the International Climate Initiative, or ICI, commissioned by the German Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Action, or BMWK, Urban Act is implemented in 5 partner countries: China, India, Indonesia, the Philippines, and Thailand, with a duration spanning 5 years from 2022 to 2027. We aim to achieve 4 critical outputs. These outputs include improving the institutional environment for climate-sensitive urban development, using evidence-based, inclusive, climate-sensitive, spatial and urban planning, identifying project concepts for urban climate action investment, and enhancing knowledge through regional networking, exchange, and learning. Our collaborative partnership comprises the Deutsche Gesellschaft für internationale Zusammenarbeit GmbH, or GIZ, as a project leader, and the international partners consisting of the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, or ESCAP, United Cities and Local Governments Asia Pacific, or UCLG ASPAC, the University of Stuttgart, and TU Dortmund University, and national partners in each of the project countries. To promote and showcase a sustainable integration of climate change into urban development, Urban Act implements its support in 14 pilot cities across the 5 countries, recognizing the unique context of the partner countries and aiming to improve the country's specific policies and regulatory frameworks. Furthermore, we engage in joint operations with the Indonesia-Malaysia-Thailand Growth Triangle, or IMTGT, implementing initiatives in 6 cities within the IMTGT sub-region. We are all standing on the edge, and every decision and action we take today will shape our future for generations to come. It is not just a choice, it's a collective responsibility that falls on each of our shoulders. It's time for us to unite and journey towards low-carbon, resilient urban development. Join us in the Urban Act, Joint Action for Climate-Friendly and Resilient Cities. We are stronger if we are together.
Welcome everyone to the Climate Conscious Cities Urban Act webinar series, Assessing Climate Finance, Enabling Environments for Cities, and the launch of the new tools for Urban Act and the Cities Climate Finance Leadership Alliance. I am Rebecca Purba, an Associate Economic Affairs at the Sustainable Urban Development section here at ESCAP. We have received over 290 registrations today for the webinar. And today's webinar is part of Urban Act Climate Conscious Cities webinar series, where we hope we can increase understanding and knowledge to build integrated climate action for low carbon and resilient cities, communicate and raise awareness of key innovations, build and enhance partnerships, showcase best practices and innovations from the project. We have upcoming monthly webinars on a range of highly relevant topics, including smart cities and AI, low carbon transport, and more. So we look forward for your participation in future webinars as well. Thank you also for submitting your questions during the registration process, as this helps the organizing team and the expert speakers to make sure that the content is relevant to the participants. Today, we will discuss the new CCFLA Urban Act tools to assess climate finance enabling environments for cities. And to start, I would like to welcome Sebastian Markart, who is the head of 3 GIZ projects in India, namely Urban Act, Cities Combating Plastic Entering the Marine Environment, or CCPME, and Management of Organic Waste in India, or MOWI. Sebastian, the screen is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca, for the introduction. And from me also a very good afternoon from everyone here from Coimbatore in Tamil Nadu in India. And I'm happy that so many participants, I've seen already 80 or more participants have joined now this 7th webinar edition in 2024 from the Climate Conscious Cities Urban Act webinar series that today covers the very relevant topic of assessing climate finance, enabling environments for cities, the launch of new tools from Urban Act together jointly with CCFLA. Enabling framework conditions, or shortly EFCs, are, as you might know, one of the several enabling factors that facilitate and support how easily subnational governments, especially cities, can receive and mobilize climate finance, including international funds, national budgets, private sector investments, which are essential for implementing large-scale climate projects. And with proper enabling conditions, city can further develop comprehensive climate action plans, and furthermore also supportive policies and regulations create a conducive environment for climate finance. Properly set enabling conditions foster collaboration among various stakeholders, including governments, private sector, civil society, and international organizations. So access to climate finance under favorable conditions encourages innovations and the adaptation of new technologies. And of course, also then with this contributes to achieving the SDGs by promoting sustainable urban development, reducing poverty, and improving health and well-being. And with this short thematical setting of the context, I'm really looking forward to today's session that is jointly hosted by Urban Act and CCFLA. So just some few words to Urban Act. It's a regional project on integrated urban climate action for low carbon and resilient cities, as you might have perhaps also already seen it in the introductory video. It's commissioned by the BMWK, the German Federal Ministry for Economy and Climate, and funded via the IKI, the International Climate Initiative. It's covering climate change mitigation, as well as adaptation, resilience activities in cities, and is active in 5 countries, which is Thailand, Philippines, India, China, and Indonesia. And it's working in a quite large consortium with implementation partners as GIZ, UN ESCAP, UCLG ASPAC, then German universities of Stuttgart and Dortmund, and then further several local implementation partners in each of the respective 5 implementation countries. Urban Act is also a member of LUCI, Leadership for Urban Climate Investment, which you probably might have known, might have heard of, which is a framework for concrete project-level collaboration between the champion initiatives of the CCFLA members. And then with this, of course, a very big thanks to CCFLA for joining hands today for the webinar, and of course, the whole work together when we were now working together to prepare the EFC tool. This is now shortly presented in today's webinar. Very briefly, Toolkit provides a standardized framework that aims to assess the enabling environments to address the barriers to urban climate finance, and has been or is currently also piloted in 2 of our partner countries, namely India and Indonesia. And yeah, collaboration Act with CCFLA and other LUCI members like the GAP Fund is really particularly important also for our Urban Act projects, as we strive to have an impact beyond our project boundaries and implementation countries. So this collaboration further helps cities accessing diverse sources of climate finance, which are really essential implementing climate projects, and also can facilitate exchange of best practices and lessons learned from successful climate finance initiatives, helping cities replicate effective strategies. Yeah, with this, let me hand over, I think for now, back to you, Rebecca, and I'm really wishing us all a very informative and exciting webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sebastian, for your opening remarks. And also, this is to highlight for participants before we embark on the expert presentation. I welcome you to use the chat room as you have already been using, but also for questions, please direct it to the Q&A box, where you can actually comment on existing questions, and you can also upvote some of the questions that you would like to be addressed. Now I will hand it over to the expert presentations. I welcome our speakers, Mr. Omar Siddiq, Urban Act Project Manager and the head of the section here at ESCAP, Ms. Priscilla Negrioros and Jesse Press-Williams from the Cities Climate Finance Leadership Alliance, or CCFLA, which serves as the only multi-level and multi-stakeholder coalition aimed at closing the urban climate finance gap by 2030. Which was launched by the former UN Secretary General in 2014. CCFLA currently has over 85 member organizations. Priscilla is a senior manager at CPI and leads the CCFLA. And she's also the lead author of the 2021 State of Cities Climate Finance Report and other publications. She's also a lecturer at Sciences Po Paris. Jesse is a senior analyst at CPI, who supports the CCFLA research on enabling environments and net zero carbon buildings. I now welcome Omar, Priscilla, and Jesse for the expert presentation.
Thank you so much, dear partners, dear mayors, national government officials, dear friends. I would like to first express my sincere thanks to Germany's International Climate Initiative for providing the resources for this joint effort between the Urban Act Consortium and the Cities Climate Finance Leadership Alliance. It really has been such a fruitful partnership over the past year, and we're really pleased to share the outcomes of that partnership and then work with all of you to implement that in your countries and cities and towns, both in Asia Pacific and globally. You heard from the video and also from the opening introduction how important climate finance is for urban areas, because they concentrate greenhouse gas emissions, but also populations affected by climate. How did we start on this journey? So about a year ago, we had a very simple question before us that had a very profound set of responses and answers. And that question was, what enabling conditions have to be in place for climate finance to flow to the local level? For us, this question was the start of this journey that we had with CCFLA to better understand and standardize and provide a framework and a tool for both national and local government officials to understand these really important enabling framework conditions for urban climate finance. Next slide. Colleagues, projects don't make great cities unless they are supported, boosted, backstopped, and lie on the foundation of good policy, legislative and governance frameworks, systems, and institutions. And that's really what enabling framework conditions for urban climate finance are all about. They're not limited to policies, legal frameworks, governance structures, but they also cover implementation capacity, financing, and investment structures. Sufficient enabling conditions are critical both at national and subnational level to scale urban climate action. And they create that conducive environment for urban climate finance by helping national and subnational entities drive climate action and contribute to the achievement of both climate and sustainability goals. They can also improve access to finance by creating the right policy environment, enabling cities access to finance, but also strengthening subnational climate data and ensuring coordination from national to city levels. Next slide. Now, it sounds like a lot. When I first heard about how we define EFCs or how it is defined in the literature, it seemed very overwhelming to me. Quite intimidating, actually. Like, where do you start? You're talking about policies, frameworks, governance arrangements, institutions. And that's also what led us to seek this framework on EFCs and this particular tool to provide a specific entry point. Because one thing with EFCs we found is that without tools such as this, it can be a very complex and multi-scalar challenge to operationalize. And that's what motivated us to provide this toolkit, which provides that standardized framework to assess enabling environment and address these barriers to urban climate finance in a systematized way, using specific indicators and dimensions. And we piloted that framework at the national level over the last 6 to 8 months in countries. And we're really pleased to have those representatives there to speak to us about their experiences, but also hear from some of the cities who are now going to pilot the subnational assessment. The toolkit has 4 dimensions. They assess national and subnational governments and their EFCs. They identify gaps. National and subnational governments then improve those gaps based on the EFCs, and then they implement improved urban climate finance based on those. So a very straightforward, very simple approach in terms of how this toolkit seeks to provide a starting point, an entry point for us to understand EFCs in countries and cities, and to really have that action plan and next steps, which is the next stage of the process based on this comprehensive diagnostic. Next slide, please. The benefits for both national and subnational governments and stakeholders from EFCs cannot be underestimated. I won't go through all of the information on this slide, but we found in our research that they help support predictability by establishing stable and predictable policies. They reduce uncertainty for investors, encouraging more investment. They improve regulatory support by supporting clear regulations and guidelines that ensure projects comply with international standards. Very much so support a coherent policy framework, ensuring stability and consistency, making it easier to implement long-term strategies and attract investments. Support coordination across different levels of government, but also different actors in climate governance in the countries overall as they pertain to urban climate finance. Support institutional capacity building, especially to make stronger institutions capable of planning and executing these complex climate projects, leading to improved climate governance. Support enhanced oversight, create a greater sense of public trust through the transparent and accountable governance practices that come out during the assessment, and provide a common standardized framework to share knowledge and resources across governments and stakeholders on EFCs and enhancing overall project success. Next slide. The implementation of the tools took about 6 to 8 months at the national level. There were 6 key steps: setting up and defining the scope and the mapping, stakeholder mapping. The scope here will be very important, particularly now that we're going to the local level, the subnational level, because what we support functional views of the city. So whether we will have metro areas in federalist structures, we will also have perhaps state level apparatuses engaged. But that initial stage helped to really set the scene. We then created a data collection plan and collected a lot through desk review and literature review of very pertinent data around EFCs in the country. And that was really supplemented by the roundtable discussions, which helped to fill those gaps. Because oftentimes what we found is there was this gap between what was on the books, the de jure, and the de facto. How are these policies and actions actually being implemented or not in a given institutional context? So those roundtable discussions with experts, cities, national government officials really helped to fill those gaps and really enhance the in-depth research and interview from a practitioner's perspective. And then you have the report finalization. We are really pleased again to have representatives from India and Indonesia to share their experiences in piloting the national tool application. Philippines and Fiji will be starting shortly in the next couple months, and we're very excited to have a number of subnational and local governments joining us from Coimbatore in India, from Bacolod, Antipolo, and Tagbilaran in the Philippines, the metropolitan area of Medan and North Sumatra province in Indonesia, and also the greater Suva area in Fiji. So we look forward to working with both of these tools. They are meant to be used in a complementary fashion, both at national and local level. And we're piloting them at, upper middle income countries, middle income countries, small island developing states, and across the gamut of federalist, quasi-federalist, and also unitary governance context. So it's quite an exciting process. And to hear more about the tool itself, and also more about enabling framework conditions for climate finance, let me now pass over to our dear partners at the CCFLA. I hand it over now to Priscilla Negiros, Senior Manager there, to take forward the presentation. Priscilla, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Omar. And I'm very, very happy to be here with all of you. And it's a pleasure to have worked so closely with Urban Act and all your Urban Act partners during this last year, developing this tool, actually two tools, and also piloting in Indonesia and India with our colleagues that are based in the country, and also Urban Act colleagues. So as Rebecca described very quickly, so CCFLA is an institution focused on urban climate finance, so increasing urban climate finance at scale. And we do that through knowledge, cooperation, and advocacy. And the enabling environment is a key aspect of increasing urban climate finance. So without a proper regulatory framework and a proper actually enabling condition, it's very hard to get into the levels of urban climate investments we need to go into the climate transition. And cities are key for that transition. So CCFLA has been developing this tool and working on the enabling environment since 2021, when this idea actually came from the Enabling Frameworks Action Group that we have in CCFLA, that we built together with many CCFLA partners, including GIZ at the time and others. And we started developing this project with the University of Pennsylvania. And now, since last year, as Omar described it, we are very happy to actually make this idea into a proper tool that we want to be used by many, many countries, national governments, and cities as possible. So very quickly on the tool, because I want to give the word to the team that has worked very hard in developing it. So we include a national assessment and a subnational assessment tool. Each of the tools is accompanied by a guidance document that provides instruction on how to use the tool, and includes resources, examples, and good practice. So we want to make this as easy as possible for people to use. Both tools cover 4 key aspects of the enabling environment. So first, climate policy, budget and finance, climate data, and vertical and horizontal coordination. So very quick on what they are about. What are those categories? So in climate policy, we have a set of dimensions which assess how national governments, in the case of the National Assessment Tool, supports climate policy and planning process for subnational governments within the country. So this is a very key and important area to facilitate investments and improve the framework conditions, so how climate policy is dealt on the national level. The second is categories about budget and finance. So there we analyze a set of dimensions which assess how the country's national and subnational financial architecture is to provide an explicit, clear, and stable assignment of expenditure and responsibilities, and put incentives for subnational fiscal autonomy in place. The third category is climate data. So there we have a set of dimensions which we access the data available for mitigation and adaptation, planning from national to local levels, and how well data and analysis are incorporated into planning and strategy. And this is a very key and important area because without the right climate data, it's very hard to actually put the right information and understand how much actually finance you need to make this transition. And then finally, on the fourth category, we have vertical and horizontal coordination, where we list a set of dimensions which assess how the national government can cooperate with subnational governments to develop stronger climate policy and planning coordination horizontally, so basically across urban systems, processes, and planning, and what we call vertically, so from local to national levels, and depending on the country, from local to state level to national levels. So thank you so much, and I'm very excited to see how these tools develop and the next steps, building and seeing these pilots. And now I hand it over to Jessie from the CCFLA team to provide more information on the tool implementation in India and Indonesia.
Thanks, Priscilla. Thanks, Omar. Great to be here. I will talk in more detail about how to use the toolkit and how we have applied it to date in India and Indonesia. So we recommend 6 key steps to implement the tool to ensure that the data being provided is comprehensive and that the right partnerships are in place. This involves institutional setup and mapping to identify key government partners and the right urban jurisdictions to apply the tool in a specific context. Preliminary data collection, where you evaluate the national or subnational government against the dimensions provided in the tool using policy and document review, interviews, potentially focus group discussions, and data inventory. Third, multi-stakeholder inception workshop or a roundtable, which is a suggested step to assist with reviewing the initial assessment findings and filling in any missing information from government and civil society stakeholders. The fourth step is to prepare the assessment results, which includes summarizing the findings for each category and highlighting the strengths and gaps in the EFCs that are revealed by the assessment. A final multi-stakeholder workshop to present and validate the findings to government partners. And then finally, follow-up actions, where the implementers can use the assessment results to strengthen national EFCs and potentially consider implementing additional subnational EFC assessment tools or additional assessments in other subnational jurisdictions. Also at this stage, roadmaps or blueprints can be developed to fill the gaps in the EFCs that have been raised by the assessment. For this pilot, we applied the national tool in India and Indonesia to evaluate the national level enabling framework conditions required to mobilize urban climate finance. Tool implementation followed roughly parallel processes in both India and Indonesia, including initial research, roundtables, and interviews. The steps here represent what we followed in the pilots, but we've adjusted them based on our lessons learned from this initial implementation to provide the suggested steps that I just mentioned in the previous slide. I'll talk through each step very briefly now. So institutional setup and mapping involved kickoff meetings with key government partners, which were really crucial to develop the partnerships for the assessment, as well as provide the data to complete the tools. Preliminary data collection was split between desk research and interviews. However, most insights ended up coming from desk research, which was then confirmed and enhanced by feedback from government partners in interviews, as well as written feedback. In India, the team conducted 7 interviews, including with city officials, national government ministries, and additional climate finance experts. And in Indonesia, the team conducted 5 interviews with provincial and city officials, national government stakeholders, and additional climate finance experts. The third step was an initial roundtable in both countries, We use this in the pilot in India and Indonesia to validate the tool, as the focus of this initial assessment was piloting, but in the future, this can be used to validate initial assessment results. The first roundtable in India was attended by over 30 participants, ranging from provincial and local governments to development partners and NGOs. And in Indonesia, it was attended also by over 30 in-person and 10 virtual participants, which included national government ministries, provincial and local governments, development partners, and NGOs as well. We then moved into step 4, which was preparing the assessment results. This involved compiling the reports based on the assessment results, as well as for this initial pilot, finalizing the dimensions in the tools. We recommend that reports or summaries should focus on key findings and recommendations and include the full assessment results as an additional appendix. But really the key here is not necessarily the performance along each dimension, but what the dimensions show for the specific context in terms of gaps and opportunities to improve the EFCs to enable more urban climate finance. Step 5 for us was a final multi-stakeholder workshop or roundtable. We again use this to slightly differently in the pilot to receive feedback on the initial results, but for future implementation, this can be used after the results are close to final to discuss follow-up actions and next steps. We had a second roundtable in India that was attended by 40 participants, again involving government, different levels of government, as well as development partners and NGOs. And in Indonesia, it was also attended by over 50 participants, ranging again from national and local governments to development partners and academia. Follow-up actions were not conducted as part of this assessment pilot. So partnerships and collaborations were crucial for developing the tools, providing feedback to complete the assessment, and validating the results of the tools. We could not have done this without the support of ESCAP and Urban Act, as well as an extensive network of government and civil society partners and collaborators. Future assessments will also need these types of partnerships and collaborations to provide input on the assessment results, validate the results, and confirm any follow-up actions. Just a few partnerships to really highlight here in terms of providing feedback on the tools. CCFLA organized several meetings with CCFLA members and external urban climate finance experts to collect their feedback on especially the national assessment tool, but also the subnational tool as well. For providing information, as mentioned previously, government partners in India and Indonesia were key sources of information and are intended as the primary users of the tool and any follow-up actions. We especially would like to thank the Indonesian Ministry of National Development Planning and the Indian Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, as well as the National Institute of Urban Affairs in India for providing this information and really using the results of the assessment to improve EFCs through future implementation. And finally, for validating the results, the multi-stakeholder workshops that we mentioned involved many members of government and civil society, and we really think this is a key aspect of implementation that leads to the success of the toolkit application. Just to wrap up, thank you so much for allowing us to go into more detail on the toolkit and the implementation. We have published the tools, as mentioned in the chat, and the India report as well, and the Indonesia report is ongoing, and so that will be published soon. The national and subnational tool assessment is also ongoing in Indonesia, India, Fiji, and the Philippines, as Omar described. And CCFLA and ESCAP are really looking for discussions, additional partnerships to apply the tools elsewhere in Asia Pacific, but also in other regions where countries and cities want to prioritize enabling urban climate finance. So thank you, and I'll hand it back to Rebecca.
Thank you very much, Omar, Priscilla, and Jessie, for the expert presentation on sharing the tools. And I would like to once again encourage participants. Thank you for those who have already submitted your questions in the Q&A, as they are also being answered as the experts are typing, but we continue welcoming you to submit the questions. And then now we will hear special interventions from national and local governments from India, Indonesia, and the Philippines. To start us off, I would like to welcome Ms. Vaishnavi Sankar, the lead and Climate Center for Cities of the National Institute of Urban Affairs, India. The screen is yours. You are still muted, Vaishnavi. Yes.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Rebecca. Yeah. Good morning, afternoon, and evening to everyone. I'm very pleased to be here today to discuss about this valuable tool, which can help foster climate action in India. And I'll probably also highlight a few areas where it has been very helpful. So firstly, about the tool, it gives like a clear view of the current landscape, showing both existing support for climate initiatives and what needs to be added. And one of the main benefits, of course, as highlighted by the previous speakers, is that it helps us understand the foundation, identify the gaps, and then what needs to be addressed, right? And by focusing on the policy, data, budget, and coordination at different levels, it kind of like creates an more comprehensive sort of an approach in understanding where these gaps are. So in India, I've been part of those consultations. So I get a sense of what the discussions were and also review the report. So let me just take the next few minutes to elaborate the significance of this tool in understanding the context in India. So starting off with policy, of course, policy is the backbone for any successful climate action. And in India, there are many national plans, policies, and strategies which focus on urban areas and climate specifically. But the tool has helped us identify policies that need enhancement or maybe something new that has to be introduced. For instance, looking at policies for capacity building. There have been many initiatives focusing on capacity building on climate data, risk assessments, and also how action can be taken in current ongoing sort of programs. So, it has strengthened that scaling up of the same would be useful moving forward. And the tool has also reinforced the case in India for integrating climate action in our urban planning guidelines. So this is something that we've taken up as part of Urban Act, but it's good to know that many other experts are also kind of thinking on the same lines. And also that there's a need for a guideline to develop climate action plan under the National Mission for Sustainable Habitat in India. Under the data, in the last few years in India, there has been quite a progress in understanding about data-informed decision-making. But at the ministry, the urban ministry does collect quite an amount of urban level data, mostly looking at GHG inventories or risk assessments, and even any kind of projects which can have co-benefits looking at climate adaptation. But what the tool has helped us understand, or rather even reinforce the ongoing discussions, is that we need to transition from data mapping to informed decision making, because that's what the tool also says. It's not just the collection of data, but also to see how we use this data. So I think that transition is the next focus. And coming to budget, of course, it's very, very critical for any climate strategy. The tool, very interestingly, does not just talk about adequate budgeting to support climate initiatives, but also that, the funds are allocated and used efficiently and effectively. I think in this context, I would probably like to highlight the capacity of cities in identifying viable projects and also developing that to align with the kind of funding that they're looking for, and then either allocate funds or at least seek funds efficiently. So the capacity of cities is what I'll probably highlight here. And in the assessment and in the report, it's highlighted, that there's a need for a national project preparation facility. So, many cities do have some sort of ideas, but they're not complete to actually get enough funding to implement it. So such a maturation sort of a facility is important, and I'm very happy to share that such a facility is being in discussion to be established at the institute that I work with support from Shakti Foundation and the Urban Ministry. So lastly, on the coordination across different sectors and levels of government, this is, of course, very, very essential. We've seen cases where, multiple actions are happening by different bilateral agencies or other organizations funded in cities without understanding, who's doing what and across different departments. So this is very, very crucial to make sure that it's coherent, comprehensive, and also mutually reinforcing. So that everyone works towards the common climate goal. So in India, there's a mechanism from the national to sub-regional levels, but the tool does identify that this mechanism needs to be extended to the city level as well. So while there is a guideline at the national level which does acknowledge the need for a dedicated climate body at a local level and a city level, the tool helps in stressing this mandate and also helps the interested climate experts to work towards this sort of a common goal. So in conclusion, I would just say that this tool is a valuable asset for any national or even subnational climate action toolkit, because of course it provides an overview across all these cross-cutting sort of themes as to what exists and also what is needed, and emphasizes the importance of these four sectors. And I think these are very, very important to leverage insights from this assessment after the tool assessment to enhance the climate action effort. So I'll stop there. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Vaishnavi, for the very succinct going through all the dimensions and how it worked in India. Thank you for sharing that with us. I would like to now welcome Ibu Ana Amalia, Senior Planner from Bappenas, Indonesia, to also share her experience in piloting it in Indonesia. Ibu Ana, the screen is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Moderator. Well, my name is Anna. Good afternoon to all of you. Well, I would like to little bit share what the implementation of the EFC tools in national Indonesia. Well, the piloting of the national tools in Indonesia is done through this research and then to consultative workshop and stakeholder interviews. I was involved in the interview with the expert. It was great, and we talked more on the national condition regarding the data collection of the climate action and the policy what we implemented in Indonesia, budget finance, and also how we coordinate along with the line ministries and also with the subnational government. We are now reviewing the assessment results, which was, I think, is quite great. Just a little bit addition that will be added in the report. And I also congratulate and thanks to ESCAP and CPI that make a very good report. And the workshop during the discussion and also the development of the tools had successfully engaged stakeholders from different expertise who share their opinion and on especially on the challenges and also the opportunity to unlock urban and subnational climate finance. The lesson learned that we get from this process and also from these tools that stakeholder engagement from the beginning of the process is very important to clarify the scope of the assessment. Of course, the continuous discussion during the expert and also with the national stakeholders is very important and very valuable to strengthen and make the tools more robust. The secondly is the extensive desk research can make the next process more efficient. The third, providing adequate access for participants to preview workshop materials and also maybe in a native language for more inclusive participation is very important. Of course, and then with the follow-up for the input from the participant is very important to be reviewed, and then also the follow-up from the expert. And the next step, we will go with the subnational tools for the assessment tools. And then our expectation from this assessment is the result of this assessment, either at the national or subnational level, should really help and be used to identify the action to improve the enabling condition to increase Indonesia readiness in mobilizing more climate funding and to achieve our Indonesia targets in climate area, both in mitigation and adaptation. And then also the tools also can be act as the reflection on the gap that need to be overcome to increase and improving climate funding ecosystem. Surely finding is one of the major aspect that we talk if we talk about the climate action. And the enabling condition is fundamental to ensure both national and subnational level can get their climate findings. As I always mention in several forum that actually the climate finding is really available out there. The source is everywhere, but then sometimes it's still beyond the capacity to access it. And that is why the environmental and ecosystem is really need to be strengthened. Tooling between the link between the source and the capacity to access. That is why the tools to self-reflect it and also to see how far we can go with the and access the climate funding is very important. Lastly, we also hope that this assessment can increase awareness at all levels on opportunities to access climate funding beyond the government transfer, and of course to strengthen the enable condition to widen the access. I think I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Imana, for sharing the lessons learned and the challenges, and also the next steps as that will take place in Indonesia. Thank you for sharing that. And we will now hear the special intervention from Ms. Mary Jean L. Ramos, City Planning and Development Coordinator of Bacolod City, Philippines. Mary Jane, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Rebecca, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the participants. I'm Mary Jean Ramos from Bacolod City, located in the Visayas area of the Philippines. And to give you my initial impression of the EFC Subnational tool, which we'll be using next month, starting August 1. This tool, of course, assessing the readiness of the local government units, of which Bacolod City is a pilot to this undertaking to access climate finance. And this is crucial. And this tool is very helpful, designed with, of course, the purpose and intent of which was explained a while ago. And is highly a valuable addition to us. Especially this is a tool for good governance, no? Assessing our readiness to the climate finance. So the tool actually stands out for its structured approach, enabling cities to systematically evaluate our climate finance readiness and pinpoint areas that we need to improve. So much so that this process of using the toolkit itself is beneficial as it provides essential baseline information for cities to build upon and improve our climate finance strategies. As mentioned earlier, it was emphasized that we are into a planning based on an evidence base. So basically, the output of this will be used in our planning and improving our financial, of course, the same financial planning also. So it would be advantageous if the tool included have a comparative feature in allowing cities to benchmark their performance against others. So we hope that a scoring system will also, or metrics will be also provided for easy comparison and highly useful. So as mentioned also by our speaker, Priscilla, Jesse, and Sir Omar, that it covers 4 aspects, namely the climate policy. And I would like to emphasize that in the Philippines, we have a law on Climate Change Act way back in 2009 under Republic Act 9729. And we should also go over that. And through this toolkit, we will be able to assess ourselves how far or how near we are in that compliance and implementation of that particular law. So that would be for the climate policy. And of course, we should also happy to have this toolkit to also assess on our readiness as an LGU when it comes to budget and finance. Because a very effective program projects if these plans will be harmonized and linked to our budget. And of course, with the source or the funding source of it. It may be an internal source or an external source. So this will be a helpful tool for us to assess regarding our budget and finance. And the same with also with the climate data, we should be also be compliant to whatever is required as to the GHG reporting, inventory and reporting. And so with this toolkit, we may be able to know how to improve the baseline data that we should be using. And of course, our coordination vertically and horizontal, as I said, both the national and subnational, even to the lowest LGU we have here in the Philippines, we have barangays, we have to cascade whatever policies, projects, and actually climate finance to harmonize all these things. And of course, I hope this tool overall offers a balanced and comprehensive approach to enhance subnational and this subnational enabling framework condition or EFCs, I mean. This could significantly contribute to increasing access to climate finance for urban areas like Bacolod City. So as one of the cities where this tool will be pilot tested, I am particularly excited about its potential and its output. Our colleagues from the Urban Act partners have already engaged Bacolod City, and we are keenly interested in the results that the tool will yield. So hopefully this will be a smooth sailing activity for us. And as I'm very appreciative of this undertaking. This is because this will be helpful for us as a tool in our updating of our various plans, especially our comprehensive land use plan, our city development plan, and of course, harmonizing all of this in our annual investment plan up to the budgeting and disbursing like finances. And with that, thank you so much for this opportunity to share and looking forward to meet you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary Jean, for sharing the view and the expectation for the piloting of the subnational tool in Bacolod City in the Philippines. We will now continue on our Q&A session. Thank you so much for everyone who has been very actively submitting the questions, and also thank you very much to our expert speakers and presenters who have been answering some of the questions as well. Perhaps I would like to start with the practical questions to the countries who have piloted the national tool for India and Indonesia. If you could share, this is one of the questions that were submitted online in the registration form. If you could share one of the biggest challenge you faced during the piloting of the tools, and how did you overcome it, so that other countries who are interested in piloting this national tools can also do the same with you. Perhaps I can hand it over first to Ms. Vaishnavi from NIUA.
Yeah, sorry, Rebecca, I was answering the question online, so I did not gather the question that you, if you don't mind repeating it.
Yeah, if you could kindly share maybe perhaps one of the bigger challenge you faced during the piloting of the national tools, and how did India overcome it so that it could be replicated in other countries.
Yeah, so one of the challenges, at least because we are a national institute working closely with the urban ministry, I think getting many of these ministries to for interviews and understanding what this tool and to contribute, I think is a sort of roadblock. That was sort of a challenge. It just took a lot of time for us to break through that and actually get them on board to do this assessment and get their inputs on it. But I think by the end of it, it has also been very useful to understand what has already been done. I think that has been one of a very good takeaways for us to know that there have been many areas where at least there is a starting point. We have initiated a few things and it aligns with, globally or even regionally what is required to take climate action. So in that way, I think there is a positive to it as well. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you very much, Ms. Vaishnavi, for providing that. Ibu Ana, if you wouldn't mind sharing any perhaps challenge that were overcome similar to what you have provided, but for other countries to take into consideration as they embark on this tool, that would be very appreciated. Ibu Ana from Bapnas, can you hear us? Perhaps if not, we can move on to the next question, to the Philippines. Ms. Mary Jean, would you be able to just share how did you come to request to pilot this subnational tool and what other cities can do perhaps to replicate your process as well? Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you again, Rebecca. For the information of my co-participants here from the Philippines, actually, I'm very thankful to the GIZ with our partners ICS because they provided us the ICSC, no? They were here last month. Starting last month, and then last week, they have finalized the engagement to implement the toolkit. So actually, they were the GIZ identified Bacolod City as one of their 3 pilot cities in the Philippines. So my suggestion is you coordinate with the GIZ people because through them, they can link with you with the Institute of Climate and Sustainable Cities because they were the one who linked us also and provide us with the necessary toolkit. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mary Jean. So also encouraging other colleagues who might have local city association network or in the global level or regional level to also connect with them and can get support also to pilot some of the tools. On the screen, you can see, you can scan the QR or type in the link to the tools. We also have the India report, as some of you have noted, asking questions about the piloting. So the tools have been piloted in India and Indonesia. The Indonesia report will be published soon. So we hope that you can take a look a little bit more. And I would like to perhaps, Mary Jean, are you coming? Yes, please, go ahead.
Yes, I forgot. I would like also to thank, of course, the ESCAP and of course the CCFLA for the toolkit that they provided us for the subnational tool. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mary Jean. I would like to hand over to CCFLA, acknowledging that there are lots of questions that you have already answered. I see that over 15 questions were answered, but perhaps if Priscilla or Jessie, would you like to sort of summarize some of the questions that were asked in the chat and how can other countries or cities engage more? Thank you.
Sure, thanks, Rebecca. I can come in here and just summarize some of what we've seen in the chat. So maybe just to clarify, while the tools have so far only been implemented in India and Indonesia, and there are planned assessments for the Philippines and Fiji, of course, they can be implemented in other regions and other contexts. And I know ESCAP and CCFLA are very open to these types of discussions. We just don't currently have anything planned right now. So you can feel free to reach out with potential additional partnerships or implementation context, and we can discuss that more after the webinar. In terms of the specific dimensions in the tools, the idea is that and you can see the toolkits all online, so you can look at the specific dimensions that we're referencing, but essentially the dimensions are somewhat open-ended and more qualitative, and the idea is to apply them in different contexts, and then based on the implementation and the specific government, decentralization structure, fiscal structure, urban governance in a specific country or urban jurisdiction, then you would kind of relatively evaluate the different dimensions. So it's very difficult to apply a quantitative or weighted standardized assessment of EFC tools. And then in terms of the kind of impact and follow-up, there were several questions on the theory of change as well as follow-up climate actions. We don't currently have that information yet, as the national assessment in India and Indonesia has just been completed, and these follow-up subnational assessments as well as roadmap implementation are still very much in progress. So we will definitely publish information about any next steps on the CCFLA website, as well as I think ESCAP will also share that information too when we have it. But essentially, we're quite interested in where the tools go and how they do influence climate actions. It's just a bit too soon to see the exact results of that. One note to emphasize is that for future implementation, we do recommend including roadmap development as a follow-up action from the tool implementation, in terms of taking the kind of gaps that are identified by the tools and then developing a roadmap to fill them. Great. I think I maybe covered some of the big themes in the questions, but Rebecca, definitely let me know if there's more to discuss.
Thank you very much, Jessie. Priscilla, would you like to add anything while we have you on the screen?
No, I think Jessie covered it all, but what I want to say is that we're very happy to see so much interest on the tools, the national, the subnational one. And what we want the most is like having different cities and national governments using it and improving the tool, right? Because what we're going to realize, I'm sure, while implementing throughout the years, is like how the tool needs to be adapted, and what do we need to include more to be able to make the best assessment possible, and with the ultimate goal for certainly to what are the enabling environment framework conditions that need to improve, to change, or to continue to be good, let's say, to make urban climate finance flows. So yes, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Priscilla and Jessie. Perhaps in the interest of time, I'll close it with one last question, and I'll open it either for the pilot countries or pilot cities or even CCFLA colleague, please. This is a question from the registration submission, since there are many questions answered already in the chat. The question is to all panelists: what are some best practices within a precarious planning environment at the subnational level? If any brave soul would like to take that question. Any best practices in EFC within a precarious planning environment at the subnational level? Ms. Jean, Mary Jean.
Yes, thank you again, Rebecca. Let me just share to you the recent activity that we have here in Bacolod City, and that was witnessed by the GIZ group and their other networks. We have presented to the smallest unit, or the smallest local government unit we have here in the Philippines. We have the barangays. So we initially provided them with a research-based output related to the disaster resilience month that we had celebrated last week. So we have already informed our various barangays that we will be cascading the climate and disaster risk assessment. And we are very also thankful to the GIZ people because they provided our barangays with the basic awareness of climate change 101, lecture and trainings, and connecting that to the climate change trainings internationally and the climate change law that we have here in the Philippines. So basically, we started now promoting down to the level, the smallest unit of our subnational local government unit here in the Philippines, which is barangay. So I think that I can share to you that we have already engaged and collaborate with the barangays initially for the awareness of the climate change. Also preparing them to the next activity that we will be having, which the climate and disaster risk assessment together this, of course, using the EFC toolkits that the CCFLA and ESCAP that provided us. That's all, Ms. Rebecca.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mary Jean, for answering one of the tough questions submitted in our registration. Well, thank you very much, especially to all the presenters and to all the speakers for your highly useful contributions to the webinar today. We can see it from the enthusiastic questions, both in the Q&A, in the chat box, and also even in the registration. And it's exciting to see the interest of other countries and other cities in piloting this tool and learning, and I hope both the India, Indonesia, and the upcoming pilot cities can be a good learning examples and encouragement for other countries and cities to pilot as well. So just to close this webinar, to note that the presentations and recording will be available. And we would also like to invite the participants to come back for the next month webinar on smart cities and AI. And lastly, also the team have dropped the link to fill out the feedback and survey. This helps us a lot, and also coming up with a new and additional topic under the Urban Act Climate Conscious Cities webinar series. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we hope to see you again in future webinars, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.